All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I am Jay Croucher, joined by Drew Dinsick, wearing a suit. An unbelievable early twist to Bet the Edge on this Wednesday, October 26th. Thanks everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about three blockbuster matchups across two sports. We're going to talk Commanders Colts, we're going to talk Panthers Falcons, and we're going to talk about the betcast I'm doing tonight in Chicago. That's why I'm in a hotel room. It's Pacers Bulls, the best game on the card, and the one that Drew Dinsick felt compared to wear a suit to discuss. But, let's start, Drew, with Commanders Colts. Now the line opened Colts -4.5, with the news of Matt Ryan being unceremoniously benched without even using the excuse of the shoulder injury for Sam Ehlinger. The line has dropped down to -3, Colts at home, and the total is 40. Is that enough of a move from Ryan to Ehlinger?
I have a lot of thoughts on this game and a lot of thoughts on the Colts broadly. And I think you need to kind of compartmentalize a number of things that are happening here, because this clearly wasn't a decision that the head coach felt like he needed to make. This came from somewhere higher. And why did it come from somewhere higher? Is it pressure from the owner on the GM? Was it the owner just taking this the decision into his own hands? For reasons that we don't even really need a reason. Irsay is a little bit of a wild card like that anyway. And so the why part of this decision is a little bit in question for me. But the what will happen part in my mind is pretty straightforward. And I don't think the market is correctly capturing it, because Ehlinger brings at least to this game, and if not, and maybe not for the balance of the season, making the Colts offense more alive, but in this game at least, he brings an element of unknown on top of a little bit of a mobility pop. And Matt Ryan was unable to do anything, create anything out of structure at all. He was operating behind an offensive line that was not winning their 1v1s very often. And I think if that's the continued quality of play you get out of your offensive line, the Colts offense probably is better off with a guy who's young, who's mobile, who can scamper, who can get, first downs with his legs. And I think that's probably a heavy dose of what you're going to get in this one. And so if the Colts are sustaining drives in ways that we have not seen them through this season, because, not a ton of enthusiasm for me on the Commies defense here, I think that this over gets threatened pretty aggressively. I don't think 40 is a fair price for this for a Commanders game period against a neutral team. And then you throw in the mix of the unknown at quarterback and the potential mobility that he brings. I think this is going to get into the mid 40s here. So I like an over in this spot. Now, long-term adjustment from a player like Matt Ryan to a player like Ehlinger is probably a downgrade. I don't have huge issue with the market moving this from 4.5 to 3, but it is pretty amazing to see an Indianapolis Colts team still favored against Washington with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. Heinicke, I thought, represented a decent upgrade over the quality of play you were getting from Carson Wentz. He certainly has very solid chemistry with Terry McLaurin, who's the most important player on that offense. And I think in general, if McLaurin can do what he did to Jair Alexander last Sunday against the Packers, then I would expect he gives Stephon Gilmore a long day this week, especially on the fast turf there. So over 40 for me is the best angle here. And I got to pass on the side, even though if I was forced to make a play, I would just take the points with Washington.
Yeah, here's the prism that I'm looking through this game. So last year in week 17, Colts played the Raiders. Colts at home. This is when the Colts were riding hot before it all fell apart. And the Colts with Carson Wentz at quarterback, they opened -8 home to the Raiders. Then Carson Wentz got COVID, and everyone thought that Sam Ehlinger was the quarterback, and the market moved from Colts -8 to Colts -1. It was a touchdown adjustment from Carson Wentz to Sam Ehlinger. And now there's more context around that. And also it was early week, so the market's not as liquid. You can't rely on it as much. But at the same time, it did move a touchdown. And now from Matt Ryan, who I understand is playing like a bottom 6 quarterback in the league. But from Matt Ryan to Sam Ehlinger is now a 1.5 point move. Like, that just doesn't cohere to me. Like, maybe the market was wrong at one point, maybe it was wrong at both points. But I don't think this is a significant enough adjustment. And yes, there is the element of Ehlinger scrambling behind that really bad offensive line. Like the offensive line of the Colts, I think now is being properly assessed as bad, but I think there were people last year who were thinking that, a lot of Jonathan Taylor's success was because of the Colts offensive line. No, it was in spite of the offensive line, which is bad outside of Quentin Nelson. Now, this year, it's been even worse. Matt Pryor might be the worst tackle in the league, and they're having to reshuffle around the offensive line to deal with all their issues. And yes, Sam Ehlinger comes in. He is more mobile. Maybe that will help. He's also making effectively his first start behind a really bad offensive line with Jonathan Taylor, who's banged up, didn't get a big workload. They do have receiving weapons, which will help in Pittman, Pierce, and the suddenly rejuvenated Paris Campbell. And it is a pretty easy defense to go up against at home in your first start. But yeah, there's a lot swirling around. I think this is probably the most vulnerable line of the week. I just don't know which way to play it, but it is the one certainly where there's the most uncertainty.
It sounds like you're ready to take Commanders, which I get. I'm not stopping anyone from doing that. But the one other kind of sprinkle to add to the over plate here, both quarterbacks very much live for a turnover.
Oh, yes.
And the short field, a pick six. Heinicke should have had 2 last week. Only ends up with 1 because 1 gets taken off the board because of a penalty. But I think Ehlinger, again, the unknown, the scrambling, and also, of course, the potential that he gives it away in unfortunate territory, all real and bring to the table, which means 40 is not the wrong adjustment in my mind.
Yep, that makes sense to me. I do think that the reason why I probably won't bet the Commanders is Taylor Heinicke right now has a 34 PFF grade. And to your point, really should have had a more damaging performance in the box score last week. Was able to get a little bit lucky. Anyway, we'll continue to talk about that blockbuster game as the week goes on. But for now, download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, Drew, let's talk about my favorite game of the week. Panthers at Falcons. The line is Atlanta minus 4.5. The total is an incredibly high 42. That actually surprised me at open. I thought that was going to open 40. But it did open 41. It's been bet up to 42. Falcons line opened 6.5. It's now down to 4.5. And the Panthers, could the Panthers be the best team in the NFC South with that defense at the moment?
They could be. Yeah. And I think the market move is telling you that the Panthers are going to score more than the opener suggested, which is not a degree of thumbs up on that offense. It is a thumbs down on the Falcons defense, which is suffering from one of the more significant cluster injuries at cornerback, which, if you didn't know already, cluster injuries at cornerback are bad. AJ Terrell was awesome, and he will not be available for this game, on top of the fact that a handful of other kind of meaningful pieces, Casey Hayward is on IR. And even the backups are dealing with mispractice here. So you could have some practice squad players out there in coverage. And it's not like, anyone besides DJ Moore really scares you in the Panthers passing offense. But, they're all playing with the chip on their shoulder. It felt like they definitely brought a spirit to the Tampa Bay game that we hadn't seen from the Panthers in a while. And so I guess what I'm saying is I agree with the market move in favor of the Panthers, in favor of the over. And this is Panthers or pass. I mean, I don't think I could get involved with the Falcons right now. The way that they're running their offense is interesting. Surely it's fun to talk about. Art Smith deserves credit for being a little bit innovative in this regard. But they were going to run up into a very, very tough test here with the Panthers. Panthers' pass defense is excellent. Panthers' run defense is solid. Their pass rush is, led by Brian Burns, who's outstanding. He's going up against a decent matchup against, with the weakish offensive line for the Falcons here. So this should be an opportunity for the Panthers to fight for, another win in a very competitive, but ultimately very poor NFC South. And I think if you feel like the Panthers are the play, and you want to take the points, I would just get involved with the money line and or back a little Panthers to win the South. If the Bucks lose to the Ravens and the Panthers win this game, What do you think the price opens on Monday for Panthers to be NFC South champs?
Plus 700, plus 750. I mean, if the Bucks lose and the Panthers win, then the Panthers are in top spot in the division because they have the tiebreak over the Bucks. And then, I mean, at that point, you're getting into the area where when Carolina play Tampa Bay next time, that could be for the division potentially. Be a very high leverage game out of nowhere in the NFC South. And I think the good thing if you're backing the Panthers, like when you're backing 20-1 shots to win the division, which is what the Panthers are right now, you need variance. Because it's not like the market is wrongly assessing that the Panthers are a worse team than the Bucks, but you need variance. And variance, I think, is here because, one, this Tampa Bay situation is just very bizarre. And there's a 45-year-old quarterback seemingly going through a lot of stuff and he's not playing well. The team is banged up. So they're playing Baltimore this week as dogs. The market is buying that there's something wrong with Tampa Bay, which they've shown that there is for the past month. So there's huge downside variance with Tampa. And then I do think that PJ Walker gives the Panthers a little bit of upside because he was the highest graded quarterback in the NFL last week by PFF against the Tampa defense, which is not terrible by any stretch. We haven't seen that much PJ Walker. And I do like backing these long shots with relatively unknown quarterbacks where, a mutual friend of ours has a theory that it's very difficult to assess quarterbacks without giving them game time action because it's so difficult to simulate pressure without getting into a game. And yes, you can fake pressure at practice, but unless you see Micah Parsons coming at you in a game wanting to murder you, it's very difficult to simulate that in a practice and really get that sense. And Walker was fantastic last week. He has weapons. He has DJ Moore. He has his run game, which was very effective against Tampa. And he has this defense that is now the 12th ranked defense by PFF. So I just think there is some weird upside with the Panthers. And being one game back in the division with the tiebreak over Tampa and New Orleans and a relatively easy schedule upcoming, I think 20-1 is a bet.
I gotta tell you, Jay, there is a theory that's been ruminating in the back of my head now for about 5 weeks, and it's getting stronger, and the beats are getting louder. And actually, some other smart people are starting to write about this. So the cat is almost out of the bag. We might as well talk about it. The quarterbacks that are succeeding right now in the NFL all have a couple of commonalities. Like they all are on the same part of the Venn diagram, which is that they can do the easy stuff and they can scramble, right? And if you think about, the way that NFL has changed over the last several years with defenses adjusting to running more too high safety stuff, a bunch of really good young cornerbacks that can take away elite weapons, and just in general, like taking away the home run threat, scoring is down to just unbelievably low totals, relative to the last couple of years. Like it's all trending in the same direction, which is that like there was no counter move by offenses to come away with the breakers for the cover two, the too high stuff. Instead, it has just created an opening for if you are a type of quarterback like a Geno Smith, like a Daniel Jones, like a Justin Fields, and like a PJ Walker, all of a sudden you are as effective or more effective than the likes of the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers, which is it's bizarre world. Like it feels like this is there's a correction coming, but at least for now, I don't think that this is unexplainable.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. I think right now we're in an outlier season that's going to become the norm from next year going forward because of this too high safety thing, because of the fact that teams are playing quarters more than ever before. There's never been a time in NFL history where it's more efficient to run and less efficient to pass. And to your point, I think the story of the season in a way is that we have these superstar pocket passers or borderline star pocket passers who are having their worst seasons, who are really underperforming. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, all these guys are underperforming, and maybe it's not. And look, they all have context around that. Yes, Stafford doesn't have a deep threat, worse offensive line. Yes, Rodgers lost Devontae Adams, but I do think a huge element of this, and maybe it's mostly highlighted on Brady, whose context is pretty good right now. Like people talk about his offensive line is fine. He still has Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Maybe the game, just the way it's moved, is moving away from his archetype and is moving towards PJ Walker.
It's crazy.
Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend. by predicting what will happen in college football, on the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Packers and Bills in our Sunday Night 7 contest. All right, Drew, I'm in a hotel room in Chicago, as I said, because I'm doing the betcast tonight between the Pacers and the Bulls. The Bulls are 7.5-point favorites. Looking forward to this one. The total is 234.
Whoa.
You could go up across the board, kind of like the under there. But what's your look on Bulls Pacers?
Well, it's an interesting game for a lot of reasons. Obviously, both teams have shown a much higher entertainment value than I think we expected when the season started. At Pacers especially, that's a fun team to watch. Like Tyrese Halliburton probably in the mix, if not your rightful favorite for most improved player so far, just because he looks like he's taking that leap with the greater usage. And even in the absence of Miles Turner, it's been a very decent start for a Pacers team that we had all kind of tapped as, this is probably a team that's going to tank. Bulls expectations were very low after getting the 6th seed last year. They don't have Lonzo Ball. They didn't make any moves to really improve their defense, but DeRozan picked up right where he left off, particularly in that opening game. Their Bulls are coming in off of a very impressive win over the Celtics. And I think you have to kind of respect the fact that, what they're getting offensively right now, it is working. And so I think, my fair price on this one is just under 7. So for me, I looked at the market and I said, well, this is Pacers or pass, and not quite enough margin to get involved with them there. But I do agree with you on the total being a little too high at 234. Again, a lot has been made of the Bulls expecting to see defensive struggles, but I liked some of the adjustments that Donovan made at halftime against that Celtics team. And, if he's got a good feel for what his team can do defensively and he can continue to adjust into those strengths, then I can see them really being able to shut down this Pacers team, particularly in the second half of the game. So, I think I'm going to be watching this one live to see if there's maybe like an explosion in the first quarter. If Indianapolis comes out hot, then I think you may be able to get a live under that's pretty tempting. But pretty clearly, Donovan is a guy that has a lot of different looks, a lot of different tendencies, and depending on game state, you're going to get something very different from him one way or the other. So this looks to me at least like a good live betting opportunity.
Yep, I like that. Miles Turner is questionable for the game. That will have an impact on the total. Obviously, you like the under even more if Turner is playing, who is probably, I know you're not a big Miles Turner guy, but he's probably the most impactful defensive player across these two rosters. That's more a reflection on the rosters than the strength of Miles Turner. But yeah, look, it's not a marquee game on paper, but there is a lot of fun stuff here. I think between Halliburton, as you mentioned, Benedict Mathurin is one of the most fun players to watch in the NBA right now. The Bulls have been, I think, more exciting. I thought that there would be a kind of a lull about the Bulls, a kind of malaise with Lonzo being out. But Ayo Dosunmu, who played probably the best game of his career against the Celtics, going 9-10 from the floor. DeRozan, one of the great throwback players. He is the subject of my two favorite bets on the game.
Oh, really?
The first one is DeRozan under 0.5 3-pointers, which is minus 175. I think this should be more like minus 250 to minus 300. He hasn't taken one in 2 games. That helps. And if you combine the preseason action where he was getting a fair bit of run, he's only hit a 3 in 1 of his 7 games this year when you factor in the preseason as well. I also like him over 4.5 assists, which is plus 100. He's gone over 3 of the 4 games. He's averaging 5.3 assists, and Pacers defense gives up a lot of assists, as you might expect. They give up 26.5 per game, so I'm sure my man DeMar can get 5. Any other NBA looks that you like tonight, Drew, or going forward?
Sticking with a couple of preseason priors that are a little bit, they're being tested to the detriment of my bank account. But going back to the well with the Magic here, I took the points against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Magic are playing a lot better than their results by a lot. And I think you look at what the weaknesses of the Magic is, it is clearly when that second unit comes on the floor. Cleveland does not have the bodies to really, I don't think, exploit that as much as some of the other tests that the Magic have had so far. Magic realistically live to get their first win tonight in my mind, but I like plus the points even better. I took the Houston Rockets again and the points against the Jazz. We talked about the Jazz yesterday. I still think there's a lot of defensive regression coming for that team. You can catch 7.5 points, I think, in a couple of, I don't know, it's just a flat 7 everywhere now. But I think that, I like the way the Rockets match up. I like in general some of their conceptual ideas defensively, offensively we've seen so far. So that should be a competitive game. And then I took, sticking with my priors on the Philadelphia 76ers. Don't love the Toronto Raptors in this spot. Laid the points, and only concern is that James Harden was a little bit too excited to be back in Toronto last night, and maybe isn't ready to play this game. But hopefully he's saving it for after the game, and we'll see it. We'll see a solid Harden out there tonight.
He's a new man, Drew. He's a thin man, Mr. Harden. Looking, there's been a buzz about, he's back to Houston, James Harden. No, he's not. He's back to like the first year in Brooklyn, James Harden.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, basically on that level. All right, Drew. We're done. We'll leave you to go do whatever men wearing suits do. In the meantime, don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks, everyone, watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. From me and Drew Dinsick wearing a suit, we will see you tomorrow.